mismanagement caused a massive ecological disaster.
President calling this whole thing a failure of Democratic leadership.
America, while Maryland Governor Wes Moore was busy signing emergency legislation to protect illegal immigrants from ICE, 240 million gallons of raw sewage were pouring into the Potomac River.
President Donald Trump says the feds cannot rely on Maryland Governor Wes Moore.
Now President Trump is sending FEMA to clean up what he's calling a massive disaster. FEMA workers will be doing this without any pay because Democrats shut down the Department of Homeland Security over immigration enforcement.
And water samples taken by UMD found E. coli and other serious contaminants.
The contamination has spread 9 miles downstream, but Moore's priority, making sure ICE can arrest criminal illegal immigrants in his state. What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Maryland just gave us an absolute masterclass, you guys, in Democrat priorities. Protect illegal criminals, ignore American citizens, and when sewage crap hits the fan, literally blame Trump. Let me walk you through exactly what happened because the timeline exposes absolutely everything. On January 19, 2026, a major sewage pipe collapsed in Cabin John, Maryland. This wasn't a small residential line. This is the Potomac Interceptor, basically a massive pipe that handles wastewater through the counties and different counties through Virginia and Maryland.
It has been nearly a month since water crews started working to fix the collapsed pipeline that sent millions of gallons of raw sewage flowing into the water.
Let me put that in perspective here. That is enough raw sewage to fill up 363 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Raw, untreated sewage. We're talking about human waste flowing into America's most historic river.
DC water sampling says almost 2,000 times higher than safe levels at times.
Super dangerous. Bacteria that can cause infection.
The EPA says swimming obviously isn't recommended. E. coli levels are above 410. Apparently that's really high. Near the drainage sites, they're finding levels in the hundreds and thousands. This isn't a simply don't swim here type of thing. This is don't even touch the water. Don't even get close to the water. You got crap floating everywhere.
These pumps north of the area where the Potomac Interceptor sewage line collapsed are sending the sewage around the damaged area. DC Water says because of the setup they've installed here, no sewage has overflowed and made it to the Potomac River since Super Bowl Sunday.
That's February 9th. So for 3 weeks, raw sewage, human waste, was continuously flowing into the river. And it's going to take another 4 to 6 weeks to actually repair the pipe.
Along the river near the break, you'll find these signs that say do not touch the water, and this means for pets too, and they remind you to wash up if you do.
No emergency declaration, no mobilization of state resources, no press conference explaining the particular health risks. Just put up a sign that says contaminated water, don't jump in the water, don't fish in the water, yada, yada, yada. Speaking of systems that are supposed to protect people but end up failing them, my subscribers have been absolutely loving Chapter. The feedback has been absolutely incredible. If you're 65 or older, you know how government systems can let you down, just like Maryland failed its citizens with this sewage disaster. That is why Chapter is different. They actually protect you from getting ripped off. Their trusted advisors work for you, not the insurance companies. No games, no failures, just honest guidance to help you find the Medicare coverage that actually works. The response from you guys has been absolutely amazing. People are finally getting Medicare coverage that they can trust. If you want somebody who actually delivers results instead of empty promises like these Maryland politicians, call 270-467-0614. Again, that number is 270-467-0614, or go to askchapter.org/Tyson. Again, that's askchapter.org/Tyson. Now back to Moore's real priorities. Now let me show you what Governor Wes Moore actually focused on while this environmental disaster was unfolding, because the timeline absolutely damning here.
Following a spirited discussion, both the House and Senate today passed legislation to ban 287G agreements between local governments and ICE. 8 jurisdictions currently use them. There are 2 models being used in Maryland. One requires jails to do immigration status checks and alert ICE they're holding on an undocumented individual. In the other model, ICE deputizes local officers to help them execute warrants for undocumented immigrants. The bill in both the House and Senate have been turned into emergency legislation, meaning it goes into effect as soon as the governor signs it.
Let me be clear about what this program does. It doesn't involve ICE going door to door. It doesn't involve radical profiling. It is a program where people already arrested in jail are getting screened for their particular immigration status. If you're here illegally and you have committed a crime, ICE gets notified so they can be deported after serving a sentence. But Wes Moore and the Democrat legislator decided this was such an urgent threat to Maryland that they needed to pass an emergency legislation. No wait period. It goes into effect immediately when the governor actually signs it.
We defend constitutional rights and we defend constitutional policing. That we defend and we support the trained law enforcement in our state, and we will not allow them to be deputized by agencies that do not hold the same standards.
Translation here, ICE is too aggressive in enforcing immigration law, so we're going to make sure that they can't work with Maryland sheriffs. But let me ask you this, what about the constitutional rights of American citizens to have clean water? What about their right to know when a massive environmental disaster is poisoning their river? Where was the emergency legislation for that?
Speaking out Monday night on Moore's expected move to sign the legislation into law.
Where was he when Kayla was being murdered?
And here's Tammy, the mother of Kayla. Her 20-year-old daughter was murdered in 2022 by a 16-year-old MS-13 gang member from El Salvador who was in the country, you guessed it, illegally. She was begging Moore not to sign the bill. She testified against it. She's asking, where was Wes Moore when Kayla was being murdered?
I don't know why he's protecting all these illegal immigrant criminals.
He should be protecting American citizens, but Moore obviously doesn't care here. He signed the bill anyways because apparently protecting illegal criminals is more important than protecting American citizens. Now let me show you who else is trying to stop this insanity, because it wasn't just grieving mothers. It was actual sheriffs who run these programs and understand what's happening when they're getting banned.
Leaders from 4 of them were here today pushing for the governor to veto the bill.
Call Governor Wes Moore and tell him not to sign that order, to veto it.
The mom of murdered mother of 5, Rachel Morin, headlined a press conference at the Harford County Sheriff's Office in Edgewood Monday, calling for Maryland Governor Democrat Wes Moore not to sign a bill banning 287G agreements between local governments and ICE in Maryland.
We're here today. We're asking Governor Moore to veto this bill.
These are people who actually deal with criminal illegal immigrants. They know what happens when you can't screen people in jail for immigration status.
Doing away with 287G has been sold by some legislators as the solution to getting ICE out of Maryland. The opposite will happen.
Let me explain why. Right now, with 287G agreements, ICE can pick up criminal illegal immigrants in jail in a safe place. For example, it's safe, it's controlled, nobody else is at risk. But when you ban these programs, ICE still has to enforce federal immigration law. So now they have to go into communities and find these people. They have to conduct raids in communities. They have to knock on doors. They have to stop people on the street.
When this program goes away in our counties, that ICE will be more visible, more present. They will be making the street apprehensions, and the workforce will disappear into the woodwork.
So Wes Moore's policy is actually going to increase ICE activity in Maryland communities. It's going to make things even more dangerous in Maryland. It's going to scare immigrant communities, including illegal immigrants, because now ICE has to operate in the public instead of just in the jails. But Moore doesn't care about any of that. He cares about virtue signaling. He cares about being able to say Maryland is a sanctuary state, even if it makes everyone else less safe.
The Frederick sheriff among those today who said if this becomes law, he will file court action. The Cecil County Sheriff's Office said it'll enter into its own agreement with ICE to continue enforcement.
And the sheriffs are so opposed to this that they're planning to sue the state. The Frederick County Sheriff said if this becomes law, he's filing court action. These are people who will actually enforce the law. And they're telling Moore this policy is absolutely dangerous and unconstitutional, but Wes Moore signed it anyways. Now let's talk about what happened when President Trump found out about this sewage disaster.
Blaming the governor for an ongoing leak that has discharged hundreds of millions of gallons of sewage into the Potomac River.
Trump posted on Truth Social that the federal government cannot rely on Wes Moore to handle this crisis. He blamed Moore for mismanagement and announced that FEMA would be stepping in to coordinate the cleanup. This is the same FEMA that responds to hurricanes, floods, terrorist attacks. That's the level of a disaster that we're talking about here.
The Post also blames Governor Moore for the new Key Bridge not being completed yet.
Remember the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse in March 2024 when a cargo ship hit it? That was almost 2 years ago, and it's still not rebuilt. So Trump is looking at Moore's record and seeing the pattern here. Infrastructure failures, broken promises, and mismanagement. And now the federal government has to step in and fix what Maryland's government can't handle.
I know this is breaking news to everyone, but the president doesn't have the facts right. I know this is breaking news to everyone, but the president is not telling the truth. Because what you're looking at with the Piedmont Sewage Project, that's not something that the federal government has had a responsibility for the past year. It's not something that the federal government has had responsibility for the past decade. In fact, the federal government has had responsibility for that for the past century.
So it's not Moore's fault, it's the federal government's fault, even though the pipe is in Maryland and it serves Maryland residents, and Moore is the governor of Maryland.
Our Department of the Environment was already on the ground testing water sewage, testing the water quality, making sure that our people were safe.
But if that's true, why did it take 3 weeks to stop a sewage flow? Why are E. coli levels still at 2,000 times higher than safe levels? Why did Trump have to send FEMA? Now, let me show you what else Moore is doing while this sewage disaster unfolds, because the priorities here get even more twisted. Maryland, as we've covered on this channel quite a bit, is facing a $1.4 billion budget deficit. And Moore's solution? Cut services for disabled Americans. This Marine Corps veteran served our country for 38 years. His son, Robbie, has the most severe form of cerebral palsy. The family relies on Maryland's Developmental Disabilities Administration.
Please reconsider these cuts. It's going to leave a lot of families, not just ours, but a lot of families in bad situations.
Maryland Developmental Disabilities Administration, also known as DDA, is facing budget cuts to address the state's deficit. A program under DDA called Self-Directed Services is how Robbie can stay home and make decisions on what kind of care he receives. It also keeps him out of a group home or institution.
It severely limits the services that they won't be able to have, because if a person's budget is cut, they're not going to be able to do activities that they enjoy doing.
And now Moore is cutting the budget for this particular program. The veteran is begging, please reconsider these cuts. His wife gave up her 20-year teaching career to become Robbie's caregiver. Last summer, the state cut her pay from $43 to $32. Now they're threatening to cut it again. So let me get this straight. Moore has money to provide free housing, food, health care, and legal services to illegal immigrants. He has money to fight the federal government over sanctuary city policies, but he doesn't have enough money to pay for a Marine veteran's wife to care for their severely disabled son.
Governor Wes Moore introduced his fiscal year 2027 budget proposal, which includes his plans to reduce the state's billion-dollar deficit.
This budget does not raise taxes or fees on Marylanders. This budget maintains a very healthy 8%
in the rainy day fund.
So how is he going to close a $1.4 billion deficit without raising taxes? By cutting services to disabled Americans, to cutting services to veterans and families who actually need the help. But he won't cut a single dollar from programs that benefit illegal immigrants. Make it make sense, guys. Now let me show you just how bad this contamination actually is, because the health risks are being massively downplayed by Maryland officials.
Water samples have found high levels of E. coli and antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
That would make sense. Yeah, put signs out, tell people not to get in.
Maryland has put sort of a precautionary measure of a pause on harvesting shellfish as well as blue catfish.
That means if you get an infection, normal antibiotics won't work. Maryland has banned shellfish harvesting in this particular river all the way down to Route 301 bridge in Charles County. That's about a 50-mile stretch downstream from the break site.
Depending on where you are standing, the Potomac River's currents can be carrying dangerous, even life-threatening bacteria. Almost exactly 1 month ago.
Certainly not great for tourism or for anybody wanting to do stuff on the water.
It's horrifying. Yeah. And are there any safe levels for those for anybody? No.
But Moore's response has been to put up a few signs and hope people don't notice.
Along the D.C. waterfront, sewage concerns aren't rolling off backs. Not for these Texas tourists in Georgetown.
We were a little cautious about coming out here today, knowing that there was a spill, and worried about what that impact would be to people down here.
Down at the wharf, D.C. locals say they might not be able to see the 240 million plus gallons of sewage in the river, but
When I drive to work, I can smell it when I cross that bridge over there.
When they cross the bridge, they can smell the sewage. This isn't some minor break, you guys. This is a massive environmental disaster that's affecting millions of people. But Moore spent the last month fighting Trump over immigration instead of actually fixing the freaking problem.
DC Water says their testing shows levels of E. coli remain high in the Potomac, near where the pipe collapse happened in January. But in areas further downriver, like Georgetown, E. coli levels that were high in late January have been dropping a lot in recent weeks.
But near the break site, they're still dangerously high. And it's going to take months and months of testing before they can confirm that the river is safe again. Let's connect the dots here, because this isn't about one sewage spill or one bad policy. This is a pattern that exposes exactly what Democrats prioritize.
I feel very strongly that we are living under a dictatorship, that we are losing our rights. There are a lot of civil rights violations, that people like me are being racially profiled, that there are communities that are being attacked.
Here's an immigration activist saying she feels like she's living under a dictatorship because ICE wants to deport criminal illegal immigrants. She says immigrant communities are being attacked and abused. But you know who's actually being attacked? People like Kayla Hamilton, the 20-year-old American citizen who was murdered by an MS-13 gang member. People like this are being attacked, but Moore doesn't care about them. He cares about protecting the people who killed him. And this activist is claiming racial profiling because sheriffs want to check immigration status of people already in jail for crimes. That, my friends, is not racial profiling. That's enforcing federal law.
I love the fact that the President of the United States is finally realizing that this was his job, and he hasn't been doing it for the past month. So I say, listen, we'd welcome you to help to address the remaining 1%.
Brother Wes Moore, you're the governor. This is your state. It serves your residents. It collapsed under your watch. And you spent 3 weeks passing an emergency legislation to protect illegal criminals instead of actually fixing it. But sure, blame Trump. That's the Democrat playbook here. If all else fails, just blame Trump. America, Wes Moore just showed you exactly what Democrats prioritize. While 240 million gallons of raw poop water pours into the river for 3 weeks, he rushed through emergency legislation to protect illegal criminals from ICE. Mothers of murder victims begging for him to veto the bill. Sheriffs warned him that it'll make communities less safe. A Marine veteran pled with him to not cut care for his disabled son. Moore ignored all of it. E. coli levels hit 2,000 times safe limits. And Moore's response? Blame Trump and claim the federal government is responsible for a pipeline that has been in Maryland for 60 years. President Trump sent FEMA to clean up the disaster Moore couldn't handle. This is the level of failure that we're talking about, because in a Democrat-run state, illegal criminals get priority over American citizens every single time. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.